Hey everyone, it's Cardi K, Cardigan Kid, show host of Chasing Billy. Just want to do a short video, a quick one about where Billy the Kid was born. A lot of folks ask, can we even really know where Billy was born? Do we have any documentation? Is he on any records? The short answer is no. We don't know for a fact where Billy was born. We can't show you on any records who his parents were, who his family was, where he was living on any census record from the 1860s through the 1870s. The first definite time that Billy the Kid shows up on documented record is in 1873 at the wedding of his mother, Catherine McCarty, and his stepfather, William Antrim. That's in Santa Fe. They got married at the Presbyterian Church there in 1873. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't make an educated guess and be fairly confident in saying where we think he was born, barring the discovery of more evidence or more records down the line. And that can happen. I actually hold out hope that we will keep discovering more and more documents and revealing records about where Billy came from, who his father was, that kind of thing. I personally think that his father was Michael McCarty. Um, I know that's disputed, and that can be disputed because we, again, have no official records prior to that 1873 date. But given that in 1867, Catherine McCarty shows up on the Indianapolis city directories as the widow of Michael, does give me an indication that we can trust that name, Michael McCarty. A lot of folks, including whoever wrote the Wikipedia article on Billy the Kid, assert that his father's name was Patrick. There is no documentation for this. There's even less than documentation for the father's name being Michael, because at least we have that city directory saying Catherine is the widow of Michael. There is absolutely zero documentation for Billy's father being Patrick McCarty. There, of course, are some census records of a Patrick McCarty being the father of a Henry McCarty, but when you're dealing with records in New York of folks with the last name of McCarty, there is nothing to tie that one McCarty out of the millions in the history of New York that gives us any certainty that that's our Henry McCarty. So there's nothing saying that his father was Patrick McCarty. That's unfortunately not established. We're unable to verify that. Now, as for his origins, I personally maintain that you can make an educated guess and an educated assumption that Billy the Kid, Henry McCarty, was born in New York. The reason for this is although there are no documents or records putting Henry there officially in New York, there are a couple context clues that can allow us to be comfortable with placing him there until further records uh, appear. Now, if something were to appear saying Billy was born in Missouri, in Texas, in Massachusetts, anywhere, then we would have to reshape the narrative and accept the new evidence. That's what history is. But until then, I think, for my part at least, and every historian, every researcher, every armchair historian, every aficionado or fan of Billy the Kid can form their own opinions. That's the great thing about doing your own research and coming to your own conclusions and all that good stuff. But my personal conclusion, and what I think is an educated assumption, is that Billy was born in New York. And we have a few clues to get us there. First off, we have Pat Garrett and Ash Upson's account in Authentic Life of Billy the Kid. This is the weakest because you can't exactly trust everything Ash Upson wrote. In fact, if you can trust anything at all that Ash Upson wrote. And Pat Garrett in addition to allowing Ash to write whatever he wanted in his biography of Billy the Kid, also kind of embellished facts or turned facts to his own needs of the moment or to glorify his own role in any given situation. But they do maintain the New York birth. You also have the newspaper reports in July of 1881, after Billy was killed, and into August, that also say his name was McCarthy. Most say his name was McCarthy, and that he was born in New York City. Again, this clue probably came from Pat, as he's going around giving interviews about killing Billy. He probably gave the name McCarthy and that he originated in New York City. So those two clues are kind of tied together. The third clue that I think is stronger than Pat and Ash is the postal inspector, Robert Cameron. Robert Cameron was on the trail of some counterfeiters in the 1880s. And when Billy and Tom Pickett and Dave Rudabaugh and Billy Wilson were arrested, Robert Cameron visited them in the jail and interviewed them. And Robert Cameron made some notes about his interview with Billy the Kid. And according to Cameron, Billy was born in New York City, and he claimed to have gotten this information straight from Billy. So, if you can trust the postal inspector's notes and report after the interview, then you can deduce that Billy was born in New York. Another clue is Billy's brother was Joe McCarty. On the Santa Fe marriage records, he shows up as Josie McCarty. And later in life, Joe kept the Antrim name. Throughout his life, he went by Joe Antrim. He shows up on pretty much every census record until his death in 1930. And every census record that he appears on, his name is Joe Antrim, and his place of birth is New York. His date of birth is consistently given as 1863. So, given that, we can at least establish that Joe claimed consistently to be born in New York, and Billy being Joe's brother, it's safe to assume that he was probably born in New York. Could he have been born somewhere else and then the family moved to New York, provided Billy was the older brother? Yes, he could have. But again, until further evidence appears, that's one more clue in establishing at least the assumption that he was born in New York. The next clue is William Antrim, Billy's stepfather. He applied for a Civil War pension in 1915. Antrim served in the Indiana infantry, I believe, in the Civil War. He just served for a couple months, but he did qualify for a pension, and he filled out an application in 1915. The application asked for information about his spouse and whether that spouse had been married before, et cetera, et cetera. And Antrim said on that pension application that Catherine Antrim had been married before. The husband died in New York City. So there's one more piece of information that places the McCartys in New York City, and Antrim did say she had two boys from the previous marriage. The next clue, Lew Wallace, Governor Lew Wallace, who had some meetings with Billy, at least one, possibly more. Um, he stated that Billy was born in New York and moved to Indiana. Now, Wallace spoke to many newspapers around 1902 and even in 1881 and 1880 and on after Billy's arrest, but he did a lot of interviews in 1902. It was rumored that he was writing, if not a biography on Billy or about his role in Billy's life, he was at least including a large section of Billy, of his interactions with Billy, in his own autobiography. And Governor Wallace said in a lot of his recollections that Billy was born back east, back in New York, and moved to Indiana. And given that we can place Catherine McCarty in Indiana, We know at least he is right on that account, and we can, I think, make a safe, educated assumption that Wallace got that information from Billy himself. So we've got Garrett Nupson, newspaper reports, Robert Cameron, postal inspector, Joe Antrim, Billy's brother, William Antrim on his pension application, and Governor Lew Wallace. That's six that I can think of off of the top of my head, and this is all off the cuff. I just want to do a short video, so I don't know if there's more. There probably is, and I will definitely dig into this deeper in a full episode. But it was just on my head, and I wanted to do a quick video because I know a lot of people ask, "Do we know where Billy was born?" So we've got about six or seven. I'm terrible at math. One, two, three, four, six. Yeah, six clues, six documents that point to New York, six sources that point to a New York origin for Billy the Kid. So until further evidence comes to light, until further records come out, or documents or recollections that we can trust, I think, for me at least, I'm comfortable in placing Billy's birth and early childhood in New York, probably New York City. um, I'm always hopeful that new information will come to light, and I think that the chances of us finding out for sure are always pretty good. There's always records hidden in some file, in some dusty basement, just waiting to be found. It only takes folks like us to just pester folks and to dig and to, scour through these records to find what we're passionate about. Now, it does record on the 1880 census in Fort Sumner that Billy was born in Missouri, but we don't know who gave that information, and we don't know if they were being honest. We also don't know if Billy was being honest, if he's talking to Postal Inspector Cameron and these other folks. Outlaws did embellish things, outlaws did lie, they did cover their tracks. But William Antrim, Billy's stepfather, didn't really have any cause to fabricate a New York origin. So we at least know that possibly his father, Michael, was in New York City when he passed away, probably sometime after 1863, given that that's around when Joe would have been born. Coincidentally enough, 1863 was also the year of the New York draft riots in July of that year. So perhaps Michael McCarty, having no military service, according to Antrim on the pension records, perhaps Antrim died in the draft riots. Perhaps not Antrim, I'm sorry. Perhaps Michael McCarty died in the draft riots. Perhaps Michael McCarty died on a job site. But it is coincidental that 1863 was the year Joe was born. And in one census record, Joe even states that he was born in April of 1863, which would place Michael alive that year before July, which is when the draft riots started. So I think it's comfortable assumption. I think it's a safe, educated assumption. And there's nothing wrong with educated assumptions being wrong once more evidence comes to light, and historians of any integrity will be able to say, okay, here's what I thought, more evidence has been presented. I now adjust my narrative that I've constructed through research to fit the new evidence. That's what historians do. We don't peddle dogma. We don't fashion facts to fit our fancy. And we don't manipulate and fabricate to adhere to some weird semi religious thing that we want to be true. So if further evidence comes out that establishes Billy being born somewhere else, I'll definitely embrace it. But until then, I'm pretty comfortable in assuming and making the educated guess and educated conclusion that he was most likely born in New York City, or at the very least, New York State. So, short answer, do we know where Billy was born? No. Long answer, do we know where Billy was born? Probably New York, based upon everything I've just briefly discussed. Again, this was off the cuff. This was just something it's all in my head. Maybe I got a few things garbled, but for the most part, the gist of what I just unloaded is true. And I think that it's a safe and good conclusion until we find out more. Billy's childhood, his origins, his youth before he got to New Mexico has always fascinated me. And I hope to at least help lead the charge in finding out his irrefutable origins. Until we do, this is Cardi K, the Cardigan Kid, and let's have fun in the search.